sort of a late edition. It will be also recorded, so if you want to pass it on to your buddies afterwards, get scanned by lovely Liz here, who will put you on our mailing list. The Shop Talks are a program by the Ink Kitchen, which is an online resource for decorators, bringing people together, and as Jason just said, a community to share knowledge. And we're sponsored most generously by the Impression Show here, by Haynes and by Hirsch. And we have the lovely and talented Sabrina from Next Level here to talk about emotional intelligence and how it affects employee retention and other things in your company. Welcome, yeah. Sabrina.
Thank you very much. So the reason I wanted to talk about this, I know a lot of shop owners are here, so you're trying to build a business, you've got your customer base that you're trying to grow, but you also have your employees that are really the heart of your company. So how do you get these employees to be fully engaged? There's all this research that says that only 30% of employees are truly engaged in their job. That means that 70% of the people that work for you may be there today and not tomorrow.
On a good day.
Are you experiencing that, or
yeah,
have you in the past? Yes. And this is very common too with smaller businesses, especially when you're wearing so many hats. You've got to think about, how you're going to grow your business, how you're going to train your employees, how you're going to keep this employee retention going. But usually that falls by the wayside because you expect that other people are doing their job. You expect that other people are showing up the same way that you are. Unfortunately, you don't really understand that a lot of people are driven by your emotion, your passion, your values. They really have to know what the common purpose is. And it's really difficult to try to convey that to them without having these 5 components of emotional intelligence.
All right, let's hear about it.
All right, cool. So the very first one is self-awareness. This can be really difficult to do because a lot of times, we're driven by our own emotion. We're actually hardwired to react to our environment. That's how we survived. Previous generations, it's always been about survival. Now we're moving into this, era where it's a team-driven organization. You're always trying to strive toward the same common goal. So how do you bring everyone together? So a definition of self-awareness is your ability to recognize and understand your moods, emotions, and drives, as well as their effects on others. So many times, your own emotion carries down into the rest of the organization. You think about that boss who's always been really passionate, who's a driver, right? They get really angry very quickly. You always sense this emotion, around them, and you feed on that. And sometimes what ends up happening is your employees react counter to that. So if they know that they're going to set you off, they're not going to share things with you. Whenever there's an issue, they're going to be afraid to come to you. They're going to be afraid to tell you, X is going wrong, or there's something wrong with this machine, or I think I made a mistake. So unless you are very self-aware of how your reaction is affecting everyone else, it's going to make them obviously react to that. Some hallmarks of that: self-confidence. Once you know yourself, once you know what your true value system is, you're going to be able to be fully present. If you're not fully present, people can feel that. I had a boss that would always say, and he was a great mentor, great visionary, that typical passionate leader. You think Steve Jobs, someone like that. And he would always say, I feel like my employees are hiding things from me. I always feel like they're not coming to me when something's wrong. And he took that personally, and what it would do is it would make him react even more aggressively, get angry, pound his fists on a table, try to demand that this information is provided to them. So he didn't have that self-confidence, that own knowledge of his own values, and trying to figure out how his emotions are affecting other people. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Have you ever had a boss that terrifies you and you run in the other direction when you see him?
Yeah, a long, long time ago. That's why I don't work for anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, early on in my career, I was fortunate that I was able to start in management at a very early age. So I've been managing teams for 20 years. And this was before I was even 20. I was young. And just having that experience with that archetype, that passionate leader, that boss that knows how to bring everything together, who's got these great ideas but has no connection to their own emotions. I was very sensitive to that. I'm very sensitive to energy. So it would make me kind of step back and take a look at what's my role in this? How am I bringing this out in him? You know, I took it personally. And I think that a lot of people do that.
Actually, I had a boss when I was younger who was like extremely passionate about the work, but clueless about that kind of thing. And like in a year, probably turned over the entire staff except for a couple people because of that. So
yeah, I mean, almost every position I've worked in, I see that happening. You know, you onboard all these people, you spend so much time and energy and effort in training a staff, building this knowledge base. They're building these relationships, but you don't understand that how you treat them is going to determine whether or not they stay. So that's where employee engagement becomes so important. Realistic self-assessment. So that basically means it's how you take criticism. You know, sometimes when you try to come up and talk to a boss and tell them, you know, I feel like when I talk to you, you react very quickly. And I've had these conversations with some owners before. I've almost always worked for the owner. And there are some that take that constructive criticism and really reflect on that and really try to figure out what their role is and how, you know, their behavior affects others. And then there's the other boss that gets defensive and feels like you're wrong. I'm a leader. I know what I'm doing. I'm the boss. My word is law. And as a leader, I think remaining very open and understanding that you don't know everything. And hopefully you're hiring people that are smarter than you. So if you have that mentality, that openness.
One of my employees here chuckling.
Oh, of course. She's like, me? I'm smarter. But having that, being really honest with yourself and having that ability to reflect and really consider what your role is and how you engage with other people is a massive skill. And one way to build that up is journaling. You know, I've found that if you really take a moment to step back at the end of the day and you think about everything that's happened and you write about it, you start to really understand your own feelings and emotions. So self-assessment, you know, a huge part of self-awareness. Self-deprecating sense of humor. So when I was, young, 17, 18, managing people, there's always you always wonder if you're fit to do the job. You know, there's imposter syndrome. So you think, I'm so young, I'm managing people that are twice my age. Do I really deserve this? And you start to take yourself seriously. Like we have those bosses that come in, they're not your friends. You know, they don't really try to engage with you too much. They build these boundaries. They try to have that separation between you and them, and they don't ever really try to get close to you. And I was guilty of that when I was younger because of the imposter syndrome, because I wanted to feel like or act like a boss, right? So I think that once you really start to not take yourself so seriously, so it's self-deprecating sense of humor, it helps to break that barrier. People start to understand you as a person. You know, they love to see that vulnerability, that humility. That's what makes people want to align themselves with you, because they know that they're working with a person with real emotions who's not afraid to share how they feel.
But I never have made any mistakes, ever.
Of course you haven't. You're Rick Roth. So,
Not the last half hour, except starting this late. Okay, go ahead.
all right, leaders understand that their moods are contagious. So I talked before about how you've had your good leader who, is very engaging, is always out there, open, willing to listen to criticism. That's going to carry across the rest of the organization. Your management teams are going to use that as the example. Then there are the leaders who are more closed-minded, defensive, see their word as law. They feel like everything that they're always right. They don't need to learn anything new. And so what it does is it shuts off the engagement of employees. So employee engagement is very directly correlated to this. Your values are meshed with your emotions. So, knowing your own values, knowing what's important to you, and what drives you, your intrinsic motivations are extremely important. Once you're self-aware, you can assess your own limitations and strengths. So this is important. First of all, it starts with you, obviously. So you're going to do all of that self-assessment, journaling, reflecting upon how your day went, taking all that constructive criticism, really being open and vulnerable. And this is going to help to carry this out throughout the organization. So you're going to be able to feel the energy of the rest of the organization. You're going to be able to drive the rest of the organization.
All right.
All right. The next one is self-regulation. So once you're self-aware, once you know what your value system is, once you understand that your emotions actually do drive the emotions of the rest of the team, now you have to be able to control or redirect this. So we're intrinsically, or physiologically actually, hardwired to react. Like I mentioned before, this is how we survived. You get an emotion, you react to it. You see fear, you run or you fight, right? There's a propensity to suspend judgment. So if you don't really understand, if you don't really take the time to know who you are, to be self-aware, you're just going to react every time. So now you're going to be able to step back and ask all the questions. You're not going to assume that you know everything. You're going to try to gather all of this information and really think about what the next step is before you act upon it. So there's a story I have actually about kind of having to step back and think about this. So there have been different times where I've worked for a lot of organizations in fashion apparel. And that's a very cyclical, and sometimes, you start out really big and then all of a sudden things start to go down. And the next thing you know, you're moving on to the next company. That's just kind of how it goes with brands. And so there was a time when we'd merged with another company and we knew that there were going to be massive layoffs. So I'm in a position again of having to lead. And my first instinct was, I need to figure out what to do. I need to figure out where I'm going to go next, and stepping back from that, having that calm demeanor. I'm known for being very calm, not being very active. So being able to step back and really understand, how is this going to affect other people? My reaction to this, my instinct to run is going to trigger this in other people. So what's this going to do to the rest of the organization? So being able to step back and really make them feel calm, let them know that I'm going to keep them informed throughout the process. I'm going to be honest with them and have these difficult conversations with them. I'll help them find new employment. Anything that I needed to do to make them feel comfortable with with these changes. And this happens often. I mean, there's constant, you have to be very flexible in business, especially as a leader, to be able to weather through all these changes. So hallmarks of that, trustworthiness and integrity. So again, your value system, and what people see in you is what they're going to reflect back to you. So you want to trust your employees, you have to be trustworthy. You want integrity, you want them to be honest with you, you have to do the same. Comfort with ambiguity. Change is difficult, change is scary. So unless you get comfortable with change, you're not going to be able to weather through that with your teams. Almost every single company I've worked for has gone through a major change. And I'm extremely comfortable with that now. I actually seek situations where I'm put in a very vulnerable position where I'm terrified. But I do that because I want to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Openness to change. Again, vulnerability is going to play a big part in this, but it's just the nature of doing business. It's the nature of, being a leader. You can't be the same person. You can't expect the business to remain the same. You want to continue to grow. You have to be able to weather these changes. So people with low impulse control, this is another important thing, are unable to self-regulate when they're faced with challenges such as abusing power, padding expenses, lying. So if you're not self-regulating, if you're not constantly assessing, present, thinking about how your emotions affect others, you also need to be able to seek that in your employees. So, if a good way to figure this out is you might be in an employee review and ask them, how they've handled or what difficult situations they've had, what they've had to handle before. And sometimes they might become defensive, right? Not open to sharing, like, I've been, I might have cheated on something, but I learned this from it. They might be afraid to share when they might be able to. They might not want to share when they're abusing power. So sometimes you have a new manager, right? You hire somebody new, and they're trying to step into that role, trying to be that, archetypal, passionate leader, driver. And they don't understand that they need to kind of pull back a little bit and be vulnerable. So when you bring it to their attention, they might react very defensively. So it's a good way to kind of differentiate who your good leaders are from who your bad leaders are. So motivation, this is the next pillar. What is your motivation for driving whatever your job is, right? So sometimes it could be money. Sometimes it's the title. Sometimes it's this position of power. It could be extrinsic. But then there's also something very important, which is your drive to achieve. So if you want to if you're that person that does the job just for the sake of doing a good job, if you're that person who wants to make a difference in someone's life, like my employees mean so much to me. I'm extremely emotionally attached to all of them. So that's my passion. That's the reason that I'm there. If I'm not making a difference in their lives, I understand that I have a position of power where I can help them grow, give them a way to expand in their career, or I could keep them where they are. I could, where they become disengaged, obviously. But if you're not kind of pushing them and you're not trying to find out what moves them, what their passion is, then they're going to potentially become disengaged. So that need for achievement is very important in myself and for the people that I work with, trying to find that common ground.
It's rare.
Yeah, it is.
I think that, probably 25% of our employees are motivated to achieve just they want to do a good job. Like, you don't have to make them do it. They just are naturally, have the emotional intelligence to do that, I guess.
Yeah.
And then in terms of motivation, I think, especially historically, certain employees were motivated to do a good job. I talked to one of my ex-employees yesterday, and that we had certain positive things we did in the world was enough to keep them working and motivated to do a good job. It wasn't just about money or certainly about titles.
Exactly. And when you have that, when you create that intrinsic motivation, when you create that need to achieve, it's going to be harder for them to leave you no matter what comes along. Like, I've been in a position where I'm so invested in the company that I'm working for that I may have doubled my salary going somewhere else. I may have had a completely different career path, but I knew that I was going to grow so much more and have bigger opportunities down the road by staying where I was and building the teams and then seeing my vision through than what would have happened if I would have just taken a position because it paid more. So building that motivation within your employees is going to help you with employee retention, which once you have this strong drive to achieve, that ties in with optimism. So even in the face of failure, there have been, and failure is one of those things that it's a part of life. You have to get used to it. If you're not failing, you're not trying, right?
Doesn't mean you like it.
Yeah, you gotta like it. But if you remain optimistic, people are gonna trust you. They're gonna, trust that we're gonna weather through all of these things together. You're gonna take care of them. They're gonna be okay. So having that optimistic point of view is also gonna help you with that employee retention. The organizational commitment. So that's a result of this optimism and this need to achieve. So once they've got all of these values aligned, then they're more likely to stay. They're more likely to want to build their career with you. They're more likely to follow you wherever you go. I've maintained friendships with people that I've led, over several years, strictly because they understand that I really cared about them.
I've seen that. True. Mm-hmm. I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah.
You get people definitely loyal to you that don't even work for you.
Yeah. So being driven to achieve beyond recognition or external reasons, you want to be able to cultivate that in your employees. Having a passion for the work itself, not being driven by, hey, when am I getting my next raise? When, obviously that's important, but that's not what you want to be that driver. Employees who are motivated to achieve are more creative. So they're not going to be okay with the status quo. These are going to be the innovators. These are going to be the people that want to change things, shake things up, help to differentiate your business from other businesses. So it's important to cultivate that in employees because you're not going to be able to do this all yourself.
All right. Onward.
Driven to measure results, track metrics, and set objectives. So once you're motivated by achievement, you're actually more prone to want to create goals, yourself and your employees. These are the people that are going out and creating dashboards to show you your progress, how much your business is growing, how they're tracking on growing a specific account. Like they want to create that transparency, that visibility. They want to be held accountable. That's something, again, with that disengagement, 70% of people don't want to do that. They just come in, clock in, do their job, leave. And then the drive to surpass your goals and interest in keeping score, it's contagious. Once you have that, once you start setting these metrics, once you start getting people excited about, watching those metrics grow. So we've grown this account by 20%. We went after this new account and it showed that we were able to progress because we followed this objective plan. Once you get people used to that, they actually need that. They want to be held accountable. And that's something that we all want from our employees.
Even this weekend, we hired 5 people to help us for the show that are local people. Uh-huh. And one of them, Liz, right there, was the one that immediately figured out on the scanner how you could tell which scanner got how many leads. And she wanted to get the most leads. And she had this little graph of...
Your need to achieve.
Yes.
Exactly. So these are the people that you want to be the leaders in your organization. A lot of times you'll promote people because they've done it, like they're your best salesperson. But your best salesperson isn't going to be the best leader, or because they're the most passionate. That person isn't necessarily going to be the best leader. They might actually turn the rest of your employees away. So you have to be really careful about how you choose people that you're going to put in a leadership position. Next one is empathy. So this one's a really easy one to recognize. We all know when we've worked for a boss that could give a crap what you're going through. You feel like they just see you as another number. They're not invested in your career. They're not coaches. They're not true leaders. For them, it's just about accomplishing whatever that goal is. And those are the bosses that we usually turn away from. Those are the bosses that we usually come clock in and out for, not necessarily making a difference in our lives. Then there are those bosses that truly bring you in, make you feel like your ideas are heard. They are invested in your career. They actually are able to differentiate your strengths and your weaknesses with you and work with you on both of them. They play on your strengths and they try to find a way for you to continue to grow that and build a career based on that. So the hallmarks of this are expertise in building and retaining talent. So building and retaining talent for your business, you want to do this because you need to build these teams of fully engaged people. You have to be able to differentiate the ones that, are engaged versus the ones that are not, the ones that have that leadership potential versus the ones that are just showing up. Another is cross-cultural sensitivity. So, we're becoming a globalized economy, right? We're doing business with people in different countries. Empathy is the ability also to be able to read into people's emotions. So you might not voice what you're going through to me, but if I'm truly engaged with you and I have empathy, I'll know when something is wrong. I'll know when you're happy. I'll know when you're not, and I'll be able to help to bring that out into light because you'll know that you can trust me. I think that in globalization, especially, like we're all working with people that speak different languages. We don't always understand, what these cultural norms are. So being able to read body language, being able to read micro expressions is going to help you to understand what people are going through and react to that. And then your service to your clients and your customers. So if you don't have empathy, you're not going to be able to build an authentic relationship with your customers. People know when you're not being honest or truthful, when you have your own agenda. You're just trying to make that sale. So you go in, you do your presentation, you're out, right? You don't come in and actually strategically work with them, do your discovery, figure out what they're going through, what are the solutions. That's when they know that you truly understand and care about what their business is about. It's not about you. It should never be about you. This is extremely important now because of the increase of team-driven culture, globalization, and retention of talent. When good people leave, it impacts your organization. They take that knowledge and those relationships with them. I've worked at organizations where we've got, the high producer who feels disengaged. He feels like we're not really taking care of his needs. We're not coaching him. We're not investing in him. So he takes those relationships somewhere else. And that hurts your business. It's going to impact your bottom line. Coaching and mentoring, it shows your commitment and your investment in the individual. So if you're taking your time to sit there and, really kind of drive a path with them, have a way for them to see themselves growing within the company. And I always tell people...
You mean like bringing them to a trade show, for example?
Yeah, exactly. Introducing them to everyone I know, like making sure that I'm helping them feel like they're a part of it. That's what's going to make them feel more committed to you, to your organization. They're going to be able to visualize now how their career path is going to they're going to be able to grow in their career. I would say that for me, that's been one of my biggest initiatives in the past decade, is really honing in on that coaching and mentoring, like taking that time out to spend with my employees and help them understand that, or help them build a career path for themselves. You're going to be able to get this far with our company, or we can move you into a different area if that's what we need to do. But having that openness and that conversation and transparency with them. And the last one is your social skill, which is a culmination of all the other ones. So the first three are more internal. It's knowing yourself, it's being self-aware. The last two are external. So these are more about what you gather from the outside, right? So for your social skill definition, it's your proficiency in managing relationships and building networks. So people who are very adept at social skills obviously have huge networks, right? So I might have, networks in other suppliers. I'm friends with a ton of other suppliers, not just customers. And sometimes that confuses people. They'll ask, why are you spending time with your competitor? Why are you spending time with, this headwear company or this company that makes tchotchkes? It's because we all share something, whether it's our ability to lead or same customer base and many times, but it's knowing that in this world that's constantly changing, I might work with you in another way somewhere down the line. So hallmarks for this are effectiveness in leading change. So a lot of companies that are experiencing turnaround, usually this is the leader that is able to bring all of that together. It's not going to be the hard driver. It's not going to be the Steve Jobs. This is going to be the leader that's going to be able to put different departments together, get different conversations going, start engaging, finance should be talking to logistics, should be talking to customer service, should be talking to production. Persuasiveness. So, we all want people to do what we want them to do, right? So asking for it is sometimes a little bit difficult. So being able to motivate them, being able to find that common ground and give them a space to feel comfortable sharing their ideas. Expertise in building and leading teams. You can't do that without these 4 other pillars. You can't create a culture, an environment, without having all those other pillars in place. So no leader is an island. I mentioned that before. Don't expect to build this business and do it on your own. You really need to have a strong team of people behind you, and that's really up to you and how you handle your own emotions and how you impact the emotions of other people. So ultimately our job is to develop teams and get them all moving in the same direction. So building that culture.
Simple yet difficult.
Extremely difficult. Almost every company is challenged with building a company culture. It's very obvious when it's not authentic. They'll try to bring in, some companies will try to bring in certain concepts that they see in other companies, the open layouts, right? They'll think that, if we just create these open workspaces, everyone will be able to collaborate and I'll be fine. Unfortunately, without, having that the self-awareness at the top and knowing how you affect the rest of the teams, that's not going to work. So just getting everybody on the same page, honing in on your other skills is important. So it's I guess some people wonder, can I develop emotional intelligence? Is this something that you're born with? Or is this something that you can cultivate over time? And I've been lucky enough that I've always been in a position where I have direct access to the leader, right? I always have direct access to the CEO. So I understand the vision, but I'm in the middle, and I know the experience of my teams. I know the experience of, I feel this person's energy, and I understand that the way that I react to that and the way that I react to them is what's ultimately going to create that culture. So just being very cognizant of that, having that empathy, and then being able to carry that into how you handle others is going to help you develop that culture.
All right.
And I know you've got a pretty awesome company culture. I know your teams. They're all extremely engaged and very active in helping to support you.
You can always get better at these things, though.
We all
and in
can.
fact, you always. I think you also forget sometimes. Certain things, and you do them, and then you get lazy or careless, and you forget to do even things that you knew were right after a while.
We get caught up in the day-to-day,
The comment was, sidetracked. You get sidetracked. Any questions? All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Sabrina.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.